West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
This mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
Yes, you do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
We came here to Foster City, where we're going to watch UC Berkeley, a University of California SWAT team, do a hostage rescue scenario.
All personnel aware of the proper protection of women. This includes all personnel identified as staff, students, role players, EIDs, and support staff. Face, eyes, throat, and drawing protection is mandatory and should be worn at all times by personnel directly involved in or near the scenario. Always check your mask prior to use to ensure there are no cracks in the mask and in safe working conditions.
Should I put the water in there now?
Yeah, go ahead. This is like some kind of chemical agent?
Yeah.
Copy, we're ready. I'm gonna get shot. I already know it, dude.
Fiend's yelling at me.
Help me. Shoot your hands. Help me. Shoot your hands. Back away.
Gentlemen, we have a chemical. We need to pull our person out. Get these guys out of here. Pull them out. Put your hands on your face. Keep him covered.
Your head up. He's got a shotgun back there.
That's all right. Keep his hands up where we can.
Hands on your face.
Hands on your face. On your face.
Someone cover me. I got a holster up, bro.
Okay, pull him around the corner. Pick him up. Get him out of the building. Quickly. We've got this. Just get that guy out of there. You, come towards us. Keep your hands on your face. Turn around. Face away from us. Back towards us. Quickly. Back up towards me. Quickly. Pull him out of the room.
We're exfilling, Billy?
Yes, we are exfilling.
It was actually around 92, 94. There was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus. And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place. So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team. So they regenerated the idea of activating a SWAT team.
And then since then, you guys have kind of branched out to doing what kind of stuff?
Well, since then, we train for everything. We train for every eventuality, barricaded subjects. Like I said, most of what we do is high-risk warrants.
And it's something like it could be like a mugging kind of thing. just like on the street? or
Depends.
is
I
it, like,
mean,
house?
a mugging, but if it's armed, particularly.
Right, unarmed mugging,
Yeah,
yeah.
right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And then obviously we're looking for training for anything else.
Yeah.
That we might be faced with,
Uh-huh.
and that's what's great about Urban Shield is we couldn't duplicate this on our own.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning and welcome to The Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, a political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill this morning. We have a great show lined up for you guys with some fabulous guests, some of who will join us in studio in not too long if you stick with us. We've got, of course, the great Peter Ogburn in the studio, executive producer. Hello.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It is Friday. I was actually wondering in my mind, like, is it already Friday?
Yeah.
This week has just been TGIF, though, and that yay you heard from was Elisa Murphy, who's running the board.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, as always. Jamie Benson is screening your calls, so make sure to call us at 866-55-PRESS. And then Monty Counselor is our video operator today, making all of us look good. Peter, I actually haven't been here as a guest host, I realized, since, the holidays.
I know, it's been a while.
It's
crazy. Frankly, I'm embarrassed.
I know.
It was
you
a time
should
of
be.
transition for everyone, Sabrina. You moved on to a new job.
I did.
You were out of the city for just a bit, but we're happy to have you back.
I am always happy to be here.
Can I just point out, I want to read some texts that you and I had earlier?
Yeah.
When you said earlier in the week, am I getting alcohol on Friday? You were so worried that we wouldn't have alcohol for you. And today, we have alcohol for you later on in the show.
It's the only reason why you came in is the alcohol.
I don't know who he's quoting there. I can't say that was me.
That was definitely you.
Because I'm personally, it's 6:07 a.m. in the morning, Peter. I mean,
Wednesday, 4:46 p.m. Peter says, got you a booze segment. Sabrina, wahoo! Shots! That's what she wrote me.
I mean, that was the other Sabrina Siddiqui.
Must have been.
Exposed.
Yeah. There is another one in town.
There is another one in town.
That must have been it.
I think that was her.
It had to be.
It had to be. So we've got some of our old friends coming in today or on the phone, like Evan McMorris-Santoro, who refuses to wake up early and show up in person. My friend Ryan Reilly from my old job, HuffPost, is coming in. It'll be a great show ahead. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
But I have some other stories that are making news, Sabrina. The Opa. Have you ever heard of the Opa, the fish, also known as the moonfish?
I thought that's
it's a good
what
fish.
you Greek people say when they...
It's not that. It's a type of fish called the Opa. It's also known as the moonfish. I've eaten this fish. It's a good fish. But science has now proven that this is the first known fully warm-blooded fish.
Oh.
Yeah, they didn't realize it this whole time. They just assumed it was a cold-blooded fish.
Should we be afraid?
No. There's no reason. They said that science says that this might help explain why they're such high-performance predators that, quote, have a keen sense of vision, swim speedily, react quickly, and have the stamina to chase down fast-moving
I think
prey.
we just found the next Sharknado.
Right.
Yeah.
The Opa, the moonfish. Pedialyte, the company that helps hydrate young children, right? They realize they have a whole new market because a lot of people swear that the cure to a hangover is drinking some Pedialyte.
That sounds gross. I've never had it, though.
Well, I have done this once because I have children, and I had
because
Pedialyte.
Because you have children,
for
you had
research.
Pedialyte.
Whatever's on hand.
I was a younger man. But it does help in hydrating you very quickly so you don't feel quite as hungover. But they realize now that they have a whole market, and so they've started advertising not only towards parents, they're advertising to a larger market because there are some grown-ups who keep a little Pedialyte in their fridge so that when they wake up hungover, they have their Pedialyte.
You heard it here first. Pedialyte is the cure to your
It works.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning hangover.
These days,
These days, every day.
These days, when I'm hungover, I don't reach for Pedialyte. It's like Gatorade and a joint and like maybe a Coke or a cheeseburger. That will cure a hangover.
Write that down. That works.
From
A
Dr. Ogburn.
cheeseburger.
From Dr. Ogburn.
Okay.
There's your hangover cure.
Dr. Og.
Dr. Og. Some sad news from Las Vegas last night. Attorney for legendary bluesman B.B. King announced that he has passed away at the age of 89. B.B. King won 15 Grammys in his lifetime, but he had a home in Las Vegas. It turns out he passed out just a couple of hours ago, as a matter of fact, late overnight here on the East Coast. Sad news.
Awful, sad news. Obviously lived a very full and very
15
amazing
Grammys.
life. Yes.
Crazy.
And I hear you.
I spent a little bit of time with B.B. King. When I was a younger man in middle school and early in high school, there was a program in the state of South Carolina where I grew up. It was called Blues in the Schools. And what they do is they take students who have an interest in photojournalism and journalism, and they put them in like an extracurricular class where they give them a media pass to the Charleston Blues and Heritage Festival. So I did it a couple of years, and one year it was B.B. King that was headlining. And so I got to interview him, got to hang out with him for a little while in his dressing room. When he was performing, he had us come and sit like on the side of the stage. He called us over and introduced us on stage. Like the sweetest, most gentle guy who, look, I didn't know the guy or anything like that, but like was very, very cool with a couple of dirtbag kids who didn't know what the hell they were doing, and was very like open with his time and very cool about it. So yeah, I'm really, really bummed. B.B. King is like in my top 10 all time.
No, I woke up to that news today too, and it's one of those ways where you just see it and you feel it even if you had never encountered the man. It's one of those people. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, there are very few figures like that who I think have touched multiple generations. Although I think he did say something very funny about how the kids these days wouldn't even.
Yeah, we'll play that audio later.
Yeah.
B.B. King has my favorite lyric in all of music. In the song "How Blue Can You Get," where he says, "I gave you a brand new Ford. You said I want a Cadillac. I bought you a $10 dinner. You said thanks for the snack. I let you live in my penthouse. You said it was just a shack. I gave you 7 children, and now you want to give them back." Which is great. It's such a great line. So anyway, I'm bummed about that.
Yeah, as we all are.
89 years old.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. We, of course, will have no shortage of coverage on 2016. What everyone can't stop talking about, Jeb Bush and the Iraq war question that has now become kind of the new litmus test for Republicans on foreign policy and trying to distance themselves from the shadow of the Bush administration. And then we'll be, of course, talking about this looming trade battle or ongoing trade battle between President Obama and members of his own party, Progressive Democrats in particular, and lots more. I want to kind of kick it off, though, with this Amtrak crash, of course, that happened the other day, Peter. It's reignited this debate over infrastructure, Amtrak funding. Certainly, there was actually a vote in the House Appropriations Committee the day after the crash on funding for Amtrak. I mean, there was a broader funding vote of which Amtrak, as part of its transportation bill, was one of the provisions, and the House Republicans did not want to meet the requests that Obama had asked for Amtrak. Of course, this predates the crash, but Democrats certainly were using that as a direct link to, or directly linking that to the cuts, saying, a day after the crash, Republicans are refusing to fund Amtrak at the appropriate level. We need, this crash is clear indication that they don't have substantial funds. But I feel like there's two sides to this. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a question of whether we're spending enough on our infrastructure. Most people would argue we're not, and transportation.
I don't know that most people would argue that. I think that it's I think a lot of people would, but
maybe not most.
I think that at the heart of this issue, I don't want to jump on your thunder here, but I think everybody's
You're always jumping on my thunder.
I know. I'm sorry. But no, I think that I've seen some people say like, oh, we shouldn't politicize this to talk about infrastructure. Well, why not? It's a real issue.
We politicize literally everything else.
Yeah, and we have a real problem in this country. We have a very serious problem in this country. Like, this is something that could have and should have been prevented, and probably would have been prevented had it had the proper funding.
Right. At the moment, what we know is that the engineer has agreed, I think, to talk to investigators and kind of, I think, address this in some sort of maybe public way. But the train was going about 100 miles per hour at a curve where the limit was 50. 50. And so I mean, but again, we don't know exactly whether the driver was, or the conductor, I should say, right? What the latest details.
We don't exactly know. Here's what we do know. This actually came out overnight. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, said that analysis of I'm quoting from their report here, that the analysis of the train data recorder and a camera set up in the locomotive showed the train rapidly and steadily increasing speed in the last 65 seconds before the crash. The train was traveling faster than 70 miles per hour 65 seconds before the impact. At 43 seconds before the impact, it exceeded 80 miles per hour. At 31 seconds, it increased to 90 miles per hour. 16 seconds before impact, it topped 100. So it was a steady ramp up to where they were going in the last minute before the crash.
Yeah, and we're going to find out more. And I think what you said is perfectly fair. I mean, my thing was more, we don't know exactly the cause of the crash, so it's hard to say like that if there was more funding, this definitely wouldn't have happened, because we just don't know, what exactly happened in terms of whether this was based in engineering, like a mechanical issue, or whether this was something else other than that. But I think it's fair to discuss whether or not there's appropriate funding. And one of the things that often comes up is just that the state of like the railway system in America. And we're like leading country in terms of economic progress still around the world, or across the globe, and we don't have an efficient national railway system that we could really boast of, and I know this has been a big thing on Obama's agenda that he's not going to get. I mean, he always wanted the high-speed rail as this sort of cornerstone of his potential legacy, at least investing in the beginnings of one. Clearly, that's not going to happen. We can't even get an efficient service for the older established system we do have.
It's this weird fight that became weirdly political about things like Amtrak, right? Because I know a lot of conservatives will say like, oh, well, what are we doing in the business of funding Amtrak anyway? They're a private company, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, that's one of the tiredest arguments there is on this topic. I mean, we fix the roads, even though companies use the roads.
I do want actually, speaking of conservatives, this is, though, when this issue was raised to House Speaker John Boehner yesterday, how he reacted to the question.
Are you really going to ask such a stupid question?
Oh, wow. Nice.
And then he went on
sweet guy.
To criticize, based on what we know, what reporters we've been asking.
The House passed a bill earlier this spring to reauthorize Amtrak and authorize a lot of these programs. And it's hard for me to imagine that people take the bait on some of the nonsense that gets spewed around here.
Nonsense. I mean, look, I think, again, it goes back to this point of no one is saying that the House is responsible for this because the funding hasn't been adequate, but you could still question whether or not that there is enough money being appropriated.
Yeah.
In this,
that's a real question.
It's a real question. I do think it was, not the best way to respond to a reporter who is asking a very obvious and I think ultimately fair question. But you know what? We'll get into. We would love it to hear from you guys if you want to call us with your thoughts. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. You can also, of course, tweet us at BP Show. We're going to take a short break. Plenty more to come. Stay with the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Valley, Santa Clara County is often portrayed as a role model for the rest of the country. The county has some of the highest salaries and most expensive real estate in America, thanks in large part to the phenomenal success of tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, Intel, Adobe, and of course Apple, the nation's wealthiest and most profitable company. But Santa Clara County also has a more unseemly distinction. I'm standing near downtown San Jose, inside what is by some accounts the largest homeless encampment in America. The jungle, as it's known, occupies a 65-acre stretch of creek where about 300 people live in makeshift structures. It's less of a homeless encampment than a full-blown shantytown.
This being the largest homeless encampment in the United States, and with us having Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs and all this cash, we're not supposed to have this kind of homeless problem. You know what I mean?
I done been shot with a pellet gun like 4 times, attacked with baseball bats, my house set on fire.
This is like hell on earth. I mean, this is like something you will not see. You have to see to believe, actually. It's like fourth world conditions.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called The Jungle?
Sorry?
A place called The Jungle, have you heard of it?
We're not making enough money really for conventional homes or housing, and we make money for subsidized homes. So we're kind of, floating between the oil and the water. We told the landlady here if it would be possible to continue staying here. She said, no, you got to go. I already rented it out. We went and loaded things into a storage facility, and it's still there. And all the campgrounds and things that we saw were too far out of the city, like KOAs and that sort of thing. So what we decided to do was to move into the jungle. So that's what we did.
A few days ago, a woman named Lydia Hernandez was robbed inside of her tent. When she refused to hand over the money, the robbers slit her throat. When she still fought back, they bashed her head with an axe. She died a few hours later. Residents say that the police never come into the jungle, so they have to fend for themselves.
There's no law down there except our own, right? There's no law, so we could smoke dope all day in the open. The dope dealers ain't scared because they're secure.
We go to the Fairmont Hotel and have a brunch or do a philanthropy. That's not going to cut it. We need billions of dollars to go into the inner cities and go into the jungle. Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is known for its innovation, its progressive thinking. It's one of the most progressive pockets in the United States, if not the world, and certainly one of the wealthiest. If we can't do it here, it won't happen anywhere. It's got to happen here.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA study. Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show on this wonderful Friday morning. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill. Today, we were talking Amtrak just before the break. Of course, the fatal crash that led to 8 casualties and then hundreds of other injuries. And we are taking your calls as well to get your thoughts on whether or not there's appropriate funding and just your general thoughts on what happened here. And we've got one caller on the line already, Ike from Charleston, South Carolina. Good morning, Ike.
Hey, good morning. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. I'll talk fast because I know I only get a couple of minutes here.
Peter Ogburn.
Hey, buddy.
The best line from B.B. King was, "My mama says she loves me, but even she could be jiving me." That's the one.
That's pretty good.
Wonderful.
That's pretty good.
And when I heard about the story of the polar bear being shipped in by FedEx, I realized how you've been sneaking in and out down here without me catching you in town.
Jesus, that's amazing.
But listen, on a serious note, I'm sick and tired of Republicans. They've got money to throw away in Afghanistan. I mean, in Iraq, in a war we should have never went to. They wasted billions on top of billions of dollars. And when it comes down to providing good-paying jobs in this country and updating our infrastructure to put us in a world class where we should be, meanwhile, we sit here, we die on the railroad tracks, and we look over at China and Japan, and they've got state-of-the-art trains that go 200-300 miles an hour, and you don't hear about them getting wiped out. I'm totally sick of the Republicans not being able to take responsibility for their fiscal irresponsibility, crashing our economy, and continuing to stop Obama at every chance they get. Meanwhile, bridges collapse, our trains are in bad shape, our roads are in bad shape, and they want to sit here and play games.
Rack him.
Wow.
Rack him.
Ike should,
That's a great call,
should
Ike.
be
We love you, Ike.
debating in the next election.
No, Ike is nails. Ike knows what he's talking about.
Yes, I mean, that was, by the way, more of you can call us at 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377, or tweet us at BP Show with your thoughts. And I do think he got back at the heart of this issue. I think what angers people a lot, though, is this issue of how much we spend domestically on our own, whether it's infrastructure spending, transportation spending, obviously there's other, agriculture spending. There's a wide array of areas where people feel like we're cutting back here, but then, of course, the defense budget, anytime you even try to slash it, it becomes a big contentious issue.
The frustration comes from, everybody gets that we need to chill on some spending, right? I think that's a pretty, maybe not universal, but I think it's a majority opinion.
Right.
But
especially wasteful spending, I think.
That's what I was going to say. I think what really pisses people off is look at what we're pinching pennies on. We're pinching pennies on education. We're pinching pennies on infrastructure, fixing up outdated roads, and we were talking about the Amtrak stuff. Some of these tunnels that they go through and signals that they use predate World War II.
Yeah. I mean,
that's crazy.
It's insane. And actually, because, of course, Republicans are probably going to get more scrutiny over this since Obama and Democrats have asked for more spending for Amtrak and for infrastructure and transportation in general. Here's what Nancy Pelosi had to say when the same issue was brought up to her.
The Republicans have been very much against Amtrak for a very long time.
So,
she's right.
And there's truth there. I mean, the truth of the matter is they can't also, the problem with Republicans is they can't agree in both chambers, even among themselves, on a lot of these big, large spending bills. Under Senate Democrats, quite a few bipartisan spending bills were passed in the Senate, and then they went and died in the House. House Republicans had a completely different version that was a non-starter. That went over and died in the Senate. And, we've kind of had this back and forth. Now the Republicans control both chambers of commerce. Chambers of Congress. Wow.
Got it.
Wonder where that came from, though.
Yeah.
They do kind of control Chamber of Commerce or vice versa. Which one is it? Chambers of Congress. We'll obviously have to see if they have any change in their approach. Of course, they will have a lot of appropriations bills to deal with this year. But we will be taking a short break, and you guys have to stay with us because we're going to be waking up Evan McMorris-Santoro after this break. We'll be right back on The Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? Gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, that guy Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement.
Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court. The same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone. And there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper, is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, just the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look. I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I can just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it. So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them too.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community together, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, being in the city together. But forgiving each other, being grateful to each other, helping each other out, living together, living together.
I got a daughter just turned 4. What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earthalluia.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, who is filling in for Bill this morning. And I am so excited right now because we have my nemesis, my official Bill Press arch rival, Evan McMorris-Santoro, on the line. You know him as another guest host. Maybe not as good as me, though. Hey, Evan.
Hi, I'm in my lair. I'm my nemesis lair.
Stroking a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
He does have a cat.
I'm just one hand, and
you're right.
I'm just one hand. That's all you see is the one hand.
It's like a dark room, and there's just a hand that's like stroking.
Yeah.
And you,
Sabrina, your head turned into a spring. When you want to go and catch people, right? It's the Inspector Gadget thing, right? Is that what we're doing?
I guess. I was thinking what happens when you wake up, Evan.
I was thinking we were more into Danger Mouse territory.
Wow, that was I think we nailed that. That was solid. No, that was banter, well bantered.
This is some classic 6:34 a.m. banter from your favorite people at the Bill Press Show. Evan, we appreciate you waking up just for us. I'm assuming this is just for us. And actually,
I've been up for an hour and a half doing news. I work for BuzzFeed.com.
You are. He is a White House reporter at BuzzFeed, who you can follow at Evan McSan. And, you know, I was actually telling Peter, when you Google Evan McMorris-Santoro, the third thing that comes up is Evan McMorris-Santoro wedding. A lot of people wanted to know about your wedding.
It was a really good wedding. What can I say?
I mean, it's like Jay and Bay or something. It's like, I don't even think, I've never seen a reporter where like the top thing that pops up is wedding. But
it was a lot like Jay and Bay if it was like if Jay and Bay was in coastal Delaware. Yeah, it was a great wedding. And, you know, I assume that people just want to know, you know, how a guy that has two last names gets married. That's what everybody's wanted to know for my whole life. And what happens is your wife keeps her name, because why would you want to take the other name?
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And then there's the obvious, like, Rick Santorum thing that happens as well, where people get confused. Right, like, you know.
I don't follow you.
I mean, people confuse them.
No.
Has anybody ever confused Evan McMorris-Santoro for Rick Santorum?
Yeah.
Never been a problem for me.
Or like Kathy McMorris-Rogers.
Yeah, I get those Value Voter Summit. You know, I find myself like on the stage just giving a speech. Like, oh, I'm sorry, your name was so close.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad we woke you up for this really quality conversation? So you've been covering the, like, you know, ongoing war, whatever you want to call it, between Obama and progressive Democrats over trade. Can you kind of break down what, you know, first of all, here's what he had to say about Elizabeth Warren yesterday. Let's take a really quick listen to that.
You know, the issue with respect to myself and Elizabeth has never been personal. I mean, I think it's fun for the press to see if we can poke around at it when you see two close allies who have a disagreement on a policy issue. But there are a whole bunch of some of my best friends in the Senate, and as well in the House.
Now, Evan, you know, he made a point to call her Elizabeth still.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Even though that's
pretty hard to miss.
Very pointedly so. Senator Sherrod Brown suggested that was sexist, and I loved, you know, you had a piece saying here's a bunch of times that Obama has called Sherrod Brown Sherrod publicly, like by his first name. What is this? Is this just theater, or are there really fissures within the Democratic Party on this issue?
Well, there's two things to say about this. The first is the president very conveniently blamed the press for all this accusations of it getting personal yesterday, when the reality is, as you mentioned, the person who said that it was personal was Sherrod Brown. You know, he said this really kind of off-the-wall thing that the president had been sexist for calling Elizabeth Warren Elizabeth in a Yahoo News interview, in which the president was sort of very pointed in his dismissal of Elizabeth Warren's complaints about his trade policy. And that sort of led to some questions. So that led us all to question, you know, Sherrod Brown and the president have gotten along. They're allies, and Sherrod Brown's accusing the president of being sexist for using Elizabeth Warren's first name, which he said, you know, would he have used the first name of a male lawmaker? And the answer is yes. He would have used the first name of a male lawmaker. He does it all the time.
He does it all the time.
I mean, including Sherrod Brown and including people who aren't his allies. He calls John Boehner John. He calls Mitch McConnell Mitch.
He calls Harry Reid Harry. I mean, you know, it's a common thing. But I'm curious, you know.
So that's the first part of what you're saying. The second part about fissures, yes, there are fissures. I have done a bunch of reporting on this. I've been really interested in reporting on sort of the politics of how the trade thing has played out. You know, the issues in the debate here. It's a complicated debate, but also sort of a simple debate. The reality is the president has told the activist left that essentially to believe him, to trust him, that he can personally see to it that a new trade pact, a new massive trade pact in the guise of a NAFTA, that under him it would not have any of the problems that progressives saw with NAFTA in terms of protecting labor rights, protecting environmental rights, keeping jobs in America as opposed to shipping them overseas. And he has said to the left, I need you to believe me that I, am with you and agree with you, and you need to believe that I am a person who can create a trade deal that you would like. And the progressive left has essentially said, no, we're not going to believe you. We don't trust you. Trade deals don't work don't work. You're being naive and you don't understand what you're doing, and you're selling out to corporate interests, and we're not going to buy this. So this is this is a trust-based argument that these two sides are having. And so that leads to some pretty strong divisions. I spoke with the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, G.K. Butterfield from North Carolina, and I asked him, I said, look, this is a pretty, stark divide that's going on right now. He's the man that's the center of this. The White House has been pressuring the Congressional Black Caucus very hard to back the trade deals. The progressives have been pressuring them very hard. The NAACP has been pressuring, joining with the liberal groups on sort of some of these trade concerns. So this is a guy right in the middle of this debate. And right now it's very important to him that I write that he was leaning no on fast track trade authority, but he wasn't a no yet. So he's leaning, but he can be convinced, right? So right in the middle.
That leads into my other question to you is, obviously there was the first failed procedural vote a few days ago where Democrats blocked the fast track bill from moving forward in the Senate, and then they came back yesterday and things changed when they reached an agreement to have some standalone votes on some of their priorities, which ultimately won't even make it into the final bill. But there are about a dozen pro-trade Senate Democrats who, along with Republicans who are largely pro-trade, save for a few conservatives, who will get it over the finish line there. But do you sense that in the House that there will be enough support, because John Boehner will have to rely on Democrats to get this over the finish line? Do you think that there is a real chance that Democrats prevent this from happening?
Well, this is the question. The progressives say that in the House they have the votes to stop this, that basically the president hasn't convinced enough people, and they have been able, they've been pressuring Democrats on trade, preparing for this moment since 2013. They've been building infrastructure to pressure Democrats against the White House for years now on this. And they feel like now that they've reached their point, they think that they can actually pull it off. This is partially having to do with the fact that we no longer have a Congress that has a lot of moderate anybody's in it. It's mostly, we have, Obama needs a lot of lawmakers who are Republicans who really hate him and don't want to do anything that he wants to do to pass a bill essentially giving him this fast-track trade authority that he needs from Republicans. And Republicans will tell you that there is a certain sort of rump faction of the GOP that won't do it, mostly because some don't like Obama, and so they won't do anything that he wants. Some of them are from some districts who don't want to see trade happen either. And then the Democrats, of course, have many Democrats that aren't going to do this for the same reason, that they just don't want these trade deals to go through. So it's a tougher road in the House. We have, of course, seen John Boehner struggle quite often and mightily when it comes to getting things through the House that not every Republican likes. So, it's going to be a different fight there. But the reality of what you were saying before in terms of the fissure, what's more interesting about that is sort of what happens after this trade thing. We know no matter what happens, if the trade thing shakes out Obama's way or shakes out the progressives' way, sort of where that leaves the Democrats for the remainder of Obama's term. What Butterfield was saying is that basically this is cut pretty deep, and people are pretty starkly divided here. This is not a partisan divide. These guys go out there every day and do these sort of partisan comments and have a good time with it. This is like friend on friend,
right?
And that is that can often be a lot deeper. And for President Obama, he's been pushing this so hard. This is some of the strongest rhetoric we've seen from him on an issue since like Obamacare. This guy really wants this trade stuff to go through.
Yes.
And so if Democrats shut him down, this could be a lasting issue that could sort of prevent them from working together on a lot of other stuff.
Absolutely. Certainly some of the strongest rhetoric we've seen from Obama, especially against his own party. He's flat out accused the anti-trade Democrats of lying about what the implications are of this particular deal. And we've also seen just the kind of divisions with Harry Reid saying he's a hell no on this. But Evan McMorris-Santoro, thank you so much for being with us. Of course, don't forget to follow him on Twitter at Evan McMorris. Roxanne, we appreciate you coming on today, and keep on watching. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back. Stay tuned to The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, and I'm filling in for Bill on this lovely Friday morning. We were just talking trade with our friend Evan McMorris-Santoro, and now we are going to continue that conversation with another friend of the show, George Zornick, Washington editor for The Nation, whom you can follow on Twitter at @GZornick. Hey, good morning, George. How are you?
Good morning, Sabrina. Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us. We were just talking about, before the break, the kind of growing divide between the president and Democrats in Congress, a majority of Democrats in Congress, and progressives certainly, on the issue of trade, as he's trying to broker these two historic trade agreements with Europe and with Asia, and then get fast-track authority for that. And you have this interesting piece about the imaginary public support for the president's trade agenda. Can you kind of break down where the public stands based on your own findings on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you would say is that quite a bit of the public just isn't really following it, and it doesn't have a ton of opinion on it. You know, you see polls that say where a big chunk of people just don't really know what's going on with TPP, and it's hard, as you know from covering it. It's a very complex thing that takes reporters and people working on it like a lot of time to understand. So the public seems basically generally split almost in thirds between they favor trade, they're wary of trade, and really they just have no opinion on it. And it's sort of strange because the White House has been saying in recent days when they've been going on the offensive that momentum is on their side, and they paint some of the attacks from people like Elizabeth Warren and Sherrod Brown as sort of desperation because the polls are turning their way, although that's just sort of hard to see and hard to find. Yeah,
and I there's a piece that actually I had written last week on the kind of how trade is emerging as the first major front in the Democratic primary for president, because Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont who caucuses with Democrats, he is very openly, publicly against the TPP, as well as giving trade promotion authority to President Obama. Constantly, he's been on the floor against the agreement. And then Hillary Clinton, of course, and we all know she is the front runner and the likely nominee. She has not really staked out a position on this. Where do you see that caution coming from, and how long do you think she can bypass taking an actual position here?
I mean, I think from her point of view, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense to get out in front of Congress. I think if a majority of Democrats in Congress, and it's almost a supermajority of Democrats, do end up blocking fast track and killing trade, there's really no advantage for her to have been out there saying, "Oh, this is something we should do." And the flip side is also true. If she's out there sort of protesting the deal and then it passes, that's bad for her too. I would guess that she, if for no other reason than that she thinks she's going to be president and she would like this fast track authority while she's in office, probably supports what the president is doing. But it's such a supercharged issue, and there's so much money coming around, especially from a lot of the progressive groups and the unions. It really just doesn't make sense for her to wade into it until she absolutely has to.
And on this very topic, because one of the things that has come up in the midst of Hillary Clinton's second bid for president is how closed off she's been to the media. She's answered a few questions, but at the end of the day, she really hasn't fielded that many. Reporters have been frustrated. Certainly those who've gone on the trail on some of these early trips have said that they would like to have more opportunities to talk to her. Her campaign is arguing, we've started this process so much sooner now. There will be plenty of time for the press to ask questions. But you have a piece up, 15 questions Hillary Clinton should answer right now. Can you kind of talk through what some of those main questions are in your view? And do you anticipate that there's a real possibility that she would be answering them anytime soon?
I think it will have to happen at some point, but I think you're right. She's just trying to control her message as much as she can at this point. We polled a lot of people sort of on the left and activists and experts on these things and asked them, what would you like Hillary Clinton to say? And I have to say on a couple of the things, on campaign finance and on immigration, though she hasn't taken direct questions, she's spoken to these issues and actually checked off a lot of the boxes that the people we interviewed asked for, talking about family reunification and a path to citizenship on immigration, talking about, an amendment to overturn Citizens United as far as campaign finance goes. But there are a lot trickier questions coming up on the way, TPP being one of them, what to do with NSA and surveillance reform. She did tweet the other day that she supports what's going through the House, but, there's obviously a lot more complicated questions about bulk collection and surveillance policy. There's a lot of things that I think are going to be much more difficult for her to answer. And I think in some way they're a little bit burned perhaps by what happened during her book tour when she went out there and she did answer a lot of questions. And there were some rough moments, like when she was on NPR talking to Terry Gross, there was a dust-up about her evolving position on gay marriage. I think they have that in mind. I think for all the good vibes that are coming out, are a little bit skeptical of the press. They think that the press is out to get her. So she's just trying to control her message for as long as she can before she has to really kind of put the rubber to the road.
Absolutely. Well, George, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm certainly very interested to see how Hillary Clinton continues to navigate some of these tough issues and when that time is that they feel that she has, it's appropriate for her to engage more with the media. That was George Zornick again from The Nation. You can follow him online at @GZornick. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
CrimAdvisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada. What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that CrimAdvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. CrimAdvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
CrimAdvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui taking you through the first hour of the show. Now done, Peter.
Well done with the first hour.
We've made it.
We have guests coming in studio from here on out.
Yes, Ben Schreckinger and Ryan Reilly, Eric Bradner. We've got a great lineup. Everyone from Politico to Huffington Post to CNN. And then my favorite, Bluejacket Brewery.
We're drinking beer later on in the program.
Beer Summit. It's going to be a historic beer summit.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, things are going to get a little bit crazy toward the very end of the show, which is why you should really, really stay with us. And of course, also for all the good, great political conversations we're going to have, the substance. Obviously, I am Sabrina Siddiqui. Very happy to be with you on this Friday. Keep watching the Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people had lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts, and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away
my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or whatever. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill on this Friday morning, and we have reached our second hour over here. We are charging through. Of course, I couldn't have done it with the help of my friends here. Executive producer Peter Ogburn.
What
How are
a wonderful
you?
job you're doing, Sabrina.
I tried.
Thank you for coming in.
No, thank you for having me as always. Lisa Murphy is running the board.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Jamie Benson is screening your calls, so keep on calling us at 866-55-PRESS. And Monty Kansler is making us look good on camera right now. And we are joined by another guest. This is a very special guest indeed, because I don't think that he's been here in the studio before. Ben Schreckinger, reporter for Politico. Hello, Ben.
Hey, Sabrina, how are you?
I think very good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Thanks for trekking out here early in the morning. I think you said you've dialed in before. You haven't come here, right?
I think I've dialed in before.
Yeah, we've had you on the phone. Yeah, for sure.
And I've definitely never been in before, but I like the studio. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Welcome.
See? Lovely.
We'll drag you back in here again. Probably not this early again.
Well, see, the more you come on, the more you can get those like preferential 8:30 a.m. time slots.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
As I've learned from experience. And we're going to be talking plenty with Ben about 2016, because he's been giving everyone the good lowdown over at Politico on what's happening there. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We go to South Carolina. Sabrina, I know you were just down there. A man
down there.
walked into a Huddle House, had dinner at a Huddle House. You know what a Huddle House is, right?
No, do you?
Huddle House is like a Waffle House shark.
Okay.
There was Waffle House first, and then Huddle House came along later. And so they tried, it's the same thing, right? Short order, garbage, drunk, or hungover food.
Okay.
Anyway, guy walks in. But like, if you've been in a Waffle House, you've been in a Huddle House. It's the same principle.
Okay. So like this
Anyway.
is IHOP?
Yeah, but I think they're... Don't get me wrong. I love Waffle House, but Waffle House is a step down from the IHOP.
I know there are steps down.
It's a step down from IHOP. It's just, like IHOP, the servers actually put on pants, like Waffle House is like people in gym shorts are serving your food.
Sorry, you're trying to actually say something though about Huddle House.
Look, guy goes into a Huddle House and he had dinner and he said afterwards, quote, "I'm in the mood for giving," and so he left a $9,000 tip.
No
He said
way.
that the person that was waiting on him, this was this past weekend. The person that was waiting on him talked about her kids, and it was Mother's Day weekend, and so he said he felt generous, so he left a $9,000 tip for his waitress.
Wow. That's probably more than the waitress makes, and who knows how much.
At a Huddle House?
At a Huddle House?
Yeah, that's a big tip.
Journalists don't get tips, so it sounds like we're in the wrong line of business here.
I know, right? I should start asking for tips. Is that that's probably crossing all kinds of ethical lines? Like I read a story and it's like,
I see
where's my
nothing wrong
tip?
with that.
It's a new media environment. It's a new landscape. Anything is possible. I think we should organize and go for it.
A tip for a tweet. That's what we'll call it. That also sounds dirty. Just keep going.
All right. Yeah. Next, I told you yesterday that it wasn't looking good that Harry Shearer, one of the voices on The Simpsons, it looked like he's going to be walking away. It's looking more and more likely. CNN is reporting that he was offered $14 million to come back. And he said no. He's done. He's walking away from, they're about to begin their 27th and 28th season.
It baffles me that the show's around and that some of them are alive still. I mean, were they young? Were all the artists young initially?
Well, no, I mean, so, Harry Shearer has been around he was a thing before The Simpsons were a thing.
Yeah.
And so his argument is, I like making music. I like making my CDs. He does radio. He's a political commentator. He says he has no time to do any of that anymore because The Simpsons has consumed his life. He's made a ton of money doing it, although they weren't making as much as they should have until like a couple years ago. They redid their contract, but he's made plenty of money and he's just ready to move on. Yeah. So we're not sure how this is going to happen, but The Simpsons creator, or not the creator, but one of the producers now came out and said, we're not going to kill off his characters, but we're going to get more voiceover artists to be the voices of Harry Shearer. He did Mr. Burns. Whoa. He did Ned Flanders. He did like major characters.
You a Simpsons fan? Were you?
I haven't. Yeah, but I haven't watched The Simpsons in 10, 12 years.
That's where I am.
I'm surprised they can offer him $14 million because I'm surprised people are still watching the show.
Right. And is there a new generation that's discovering
There is. No, I mean, look.
Or is it just the people who are die-hard fans?
I think I'm a little older than the two of you, but like having grown up.
A lot older.
Having grown up. That hurts, actually. No, having grown up, like The Simpsons were a fabric of my childhood, right? There was as The Simpsons were coming of age, I was also coming of age.
Okay.
And so once I got older, I realized that The Simpsons lost a lot of their allure, right? They weren't as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
But the people are still watching, and it's still a thing, and it's still a huge part of our culture. And it's gonna I can't imagine going on without Harry Shearer. It's gonna be really, really weird.
From sunset.
All right. One final story, because we're in the middle of NBA playoff season.
I know.
A couple scores.
You're reminding me.
A couple scores
of
from
the tragedy of last night, but go on.
Yeah. Well, the Chicago
Bulls fans are sad.
Are out. Sad Bulls fans are sad. I'm sorry, Sabrina. They were beaten by the Cleveland Cavaliers, 94-73.
This is what really irritated me is that it was such a good, closely fought series, and in the last game. That is where, what ended up being the last game. That is where Chicago loses its fight. It was, but it got away. I mean, they started off so strong.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, dude.
The Bulls never had a chance in that series. Never had a chance.
But okay. But this, I mean, I agree.
Am I wrong?
Well, no, I agree.
I mean,
but they exceeded expectations.
By winning a game or two?
Exceeded expectations.
Here's the thing about the Bulls. The Bulls are like the Grizzlies, right? Like, they'll win a couple games. They'll make their opponents will get a little scare here and there, but they can't close. The Bulls are who we thought they were.
Sabrina, do you want me to cut his mic? Because I can.
Yeah. Ben, do you want to chime in? Are you an NBA fan?
I have stopped being an NBA fan a long time ago. I think college basketball is a lot more fun. It's just basketball. No
That's
song
what everyone
and dance
tells
and light
me.
show.
That's what everyone tells me.
That's what my dad tells me.
No, I've got a lot of friends who say that. Listen, I think that next year they could be a real formidable team, but I think they need. I think that a change in leadership. I think
they're going to lose their coach.
They need to.
Their coach is gone. He's going to New Orleans.
And I think he to be fair, you can't pin all the blame on him. But Derrick Rose is actually back, and he was actually doing well this season. That's what made the difference, and that's why I was disappointed in the way this came to an end. And that's why
Derrick Rose played for the whole series. Then is that what you're saying? He played for the whole series with the Cavaliers.
What?
He played, right? Like Derrick Rose played, and then they still lost. So that's what I'm saying.
No, but they came closer. Okay, you have to understand. As someone who's been wondering, I still think that he needs work. I don't think that he's lived up to expectations. But listen, you have to understand what it's like being a Bulls fan and just waiting for that moment where they looked like they could really be a contender, and then I was expecting them to make it.
That is the saddest defense of a sports team I think I've ever heard.
This is where we are. I mean, listen, I'm actually a Lakers fan first and foremost, so I don't even have anything to talk about anymore.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
You're gonna admit that?
Why wouldn't I?
Are you just a Phil Knight fan?
Kobe Bryant. He grew up in Italy, and so did I. There you
That's
go.
it?
Oh, there we
That's
go.
the connection?
That's the connection.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, so Ben, sorry, and now that we're done ranting as we do, you've been writing about the Republic, well, about 2016, both sides, but one story you had talks about how diverse and how unwieldy, if you will, I think that's the word you use, the Republican primary field is shaping up to be. It's getting difficult for the RNC itself to keep track. Break down, what's happening here, as well as how much do we expect this field to grow? I know John Bolton, former UN ambassador, said he won't run. Is that a good thing? Is it good that this is this large and this diverse, or is this going to drag them down?
Well, from the perspective of the RNC, you want a big, strong field, and there are a lot of strong candidates, more strong candidates than there were in 2012. But there are also a lot more weak candidates. And depending on how you count, it's basically at about 19 candidates right now who are either in the race or actively exploring a run. Some of them are people that you've never heard of. Mark Everson, a former IRS commissioner, several former and forgotten governors. But the RNC is really struggling, one, to figure out how they're going to fit 19 or even 15, 12 people on a stage for a debate. And as we saw yesterday, they had trouble putting together their own 2016 straw poll online. They left out a couple former governors who are pretty serious people who are exploring running for president, and put about a dozen people on the list who have absolutely no intention of running.
Well, this is what kind of baffles me because, you mentioned the word exploring, which is very true. That's the word that's being used certainly by former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, former Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. See, I actually already gave him his untimely exit from
Nice knowing you, Bobby.
Yeah, no, it was nice knowing you. But how long can these candidates get away with not declaring? Because Jeb Bush just the other day said, I'm running for president because blah, 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 blah. If I run, he stopped and corrected himself because it's getting kind of ludicrous that we're continuing with this charade for many of these candidates where they're not running, but they clearly are running.
Yeah, the cutoff may be the debates almost indefinitely, because at the end of the day, even when these guys run afoul of the letter of the law, the FEC rarely intervenes. When they do, it can take them something like 18 months to actually take any action. But constantly, if you're talking to the spokespeople for these candidates or not quite candidates, they're constantly correcting themselves, going on background, explaining, I have to be really careful here about the way that I phrase this because of the lawyers, and we have to be very careful about the way we phrase what this candidate's doing here. It's gotten a bit ridiculous.
Is it your sense, because Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, they all announced within a week of each other, and I sense, obviously they're all from the Senate. They're sort of rivals just because they are the three, Republicans who are coming from Congress and the Senate specifically, and all kind of somewhat similar backgrounds. I mean, they all have an overlap also in terms of the supporters that they reach out to. Mark Rubio's tried to shift himself a little outside of the Tea Party base, but there's some overlap on the libertarian side between Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, the Tea Party side between all three of them, and then Rand Paul and Mark Rubio is trying to lean a little bit more mainstream as well. What do you make of how early they got out? Was it because they had to get their name out there? They wouldn't be able, they need to fundraise in a way that Jeb Bush doesn't, that Scott Walker doesn't, or do you think they were just one of them saw that the other was getting in, so they had to throw their hat in?
Part of the reason was that there was a Senate recess there, so there was a 2-week window where sort of people knew that all three of them were going to have to sort of watch each other and each pick a date where they weren't going to step on each other's feet. With the reason that we haven't seen Scott Walker get in, at least the reason that he and his people give, is that he's waiting until Wisconsin passes its budget. Obviously, much of his campaign will rest on his fiscal record in Wisconsin. With Jeb Bush, they've basically sort of pioneered this new approach to the pre-campaign where they've figured out that they can raise much, much more money before he's a declared candidate. So he may be the last of all of them to get in. But it is a bit odd, as Jeb Bush's sort of linguistic stumbles have shown, that these guys are all running for president, no matter what they say.
Yeah, and I think that the fundraising, the early fundraising for Jeb Bush has trounced just any other candidate, even Hillary Clinton for that matter. There's been reports that her aides have been concerned about the sort of money that he's raising. And it's kind of remarkable. But if you're, I guess, what's your strategy? If you're Marco Rubio, if you're Scott Walker, and you simply don't have that name recognition, then what's your strategy to compete with someone like Jeb Bush?
I think it's pretty simple. I think it's the sugar daddy approach. The Kochs have their eyes on Scott Walker. Obviously, if they decided to wade into the primary on his behalf, that would be a game changer in terms of financing. Marco Rubio has a I believe billionaire, a very, very rich former, I think, Jets owner, Norman Brayman, in his corner. And as Sheldon Adelson showed last cycle, where he got in on behalf of Newt Gingrich and sort of kept an otherwise moribund campaign alive, it really just takes one very rich person to do this. And now you're going to see in this primary much more of that Sheldon Adelson model.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about that, in fact, when we come back after this break. And I definitely want to quiz you a little bit more on Scott Walker and Israel, which, of course, would, in theory, link directly to Sheldon Adelson and his interests as well. Of course, Ben Schreckinger with Politico will be joining us after the break. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
my beauty,
my power,
my life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
red. the Grand River Red, the American Nile,
the Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
and I am the most endangered river in America.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill today. Right before the break, we were talking to Ben Schreckinger of Politico, a reporter there since January. So congratulations, because this is a fairly recent thing.
Thanks. It's good to be back in D.C.
Yeah. So you did live here before. You said you came over from Boston.
That's right. I was at National Journal, and then I was freelancing for about 18 months and had to come back to cover the 2016 race. Yeah, right. Couldn't miss it.
Yeah, can't miss it. And on that subject, we were talking about some of the donors who bankroll these campaigns. One of them that you mentioned is Sheldon Adelson, and he had his quote-unquote Sheldon Adelson primary recently in Vegas when the candidates descend upon the Venetian and try to curry favor with lobbyists there, largely pro-Israel lobbyists. And Scott Walker happens to be in Israel at the moment, or was just recently in Israel.
Yeah, I believe he got back yesterday.
Okay. And he's apparently not taking many questions from the press there. Is that correct?
Right. He was holding private events only. He was in London in February, took a question about evolution, punted on it, sort of got himself in trouble. And it seems like the decision that they made was that he wasn't quite ready to speak about the complexities of Middle East politics on the ground in Israel. So there's no press.
It's interesting because he is trying to ramp up his foreign policy credentials. Marco Rubio is obviously running very heavily on foreign policy. Rand Paul also does, although from a different approach. Is this emerging as the key issue in the election, at least in the primary, among Republicans?
I'm not sure I'm ready to call it the key issue. It is much more prominent at this point in this cycle than it was in 2012. Mm-hmm. I think that the single biggest factor is the rise of the Islamic State. Mm-hmm. And even if it's the leaders are talking about it, but there's real concern among the Republican primary electorate about ISIS, real fear and a real disconnect between them and independents and Democrats who still count foreign policy as a much lower priority.
Because I'm curious if this will be something that Hillary Clinton will really have to answer for. The fact that Obama polls really low on foreign policy, will that reflect on her campaign?
I think almost inevitably. I think it's unlikely to be the defining issue of the Democratic primary, to the extent that there is a Democratic primary. I think pretty clearly that's going to be about economic issues, inequality, trade. Although Lincoln Chafee has an almost single-minded focus on her Iraq war vote, and so it will come up at some point. But I think that if current trends hold, at least, it will be a major general election issue.
Well, thank you so much, Ben Schreckinger from Politico. We will be back after this break. Keep watching the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
she's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian and filling in for Bill on this Friday. And I am very excited because we have one of my own friends and former colleagues, former desk mates even, Ryan Reilly, who is a justice reporter at the Huffington Post. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan J. Reilly. Joining us now. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you.
You were former desk mate.
We're sharing a desk once again.
So spill it. What's she like? The worst to work with?
Literally.
She's so great to work with. I can't say enough about her. I just miss her so much.
Wow, sarcasm. I'm dripping with sarcasm. Aw. I mean, Ryan
Did you
and
ever have to sit through any of her rants about the Chicago Bulls? Because she's got thoughts on that. She's got takes on that.
We had some thoughts earlier. But Ryan and I, would probably be in competition for who shows up the latest to work. I think that was what...
This is super early for me right now.
Yeah, the fact that Ryan, that you're here is so incredible.
It is.
And I feel actually very special. I think it's a testament to our friendship.
There's multiple alarms and it was the whole thing.
You were here. I woke up, my alarm went off at 4.
That's pretty early.
Then again at like 4.
So you're sleeping the rest of the day. You're not getting any work done.
I mean, I'm going to work. Getting work done is a separate question. I'm physically going to go to the office and see what happens.
You guys don't have a nap room, though. That's the problem.
I know.
Yeah.
I actually thought about that today. I thought about that last night. I was like, this is the first time I'm guest hosting this show, and I don't have the option of napping at work. Yeah. This is what happens when you leave Huffington Post.
Yeah, I know.
So Ryan, you've done such great reporting on the criminal justice beat, and you were out in Ferguson for a long time. I remember last year you've reported on Baltimore. You've reported on a lot of the issues that have come up with police brutality, on Eric Garner in New York. And I think that there's this, it's interesting because, of course, this is all coinciding with an upcoming presidential election where it's not quite at the forefront of discussion yet because it's early and we're in the primary process, certainly on the Republican side. But Hillary Clinton's interesting because she's trying to get out ahead of some of these issues as she sees where the conversation is, and certainly among the Democratic base. What has she been saying in the wake of all of this? And have you seen kind of an evolution on her part?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think she sort of has to at this point. I mean, just where people are politically, like especially in the Democratic Party, even in the Republican Party, like that's a big criminal justice reform is a big thing. So it's not like sort of an issue that she can really avoid. But it's sort of strange because she has to put herself up against a lot of policies that her husband supported, and even she was vocal about, back in the 1990s. I mean, she was talking about teenagers being super criminals and like all of this like really strong, tough on crime rhetoric, because that was something that Democrats were very concerned about, a decade ago. So, I mean, a couple decades ago. So it's something that I think it's a weird position sort of for her to be on, but sort of is in line with, where the Democratic Party is at and where most of the nation, I think, is going.
So has she, because I saw certainly her campaign had put out some statements in the midst of the riots in Baltimore, and she certainly tweeted about Freddie Gray. Has she explicitly articulated any viewpoints policy-wise that contrast what you were just mentioning and explained, or I guess she hasn't talked to media a lot, but explained the evolution, or is that part not actually come yet?
I don't know that she's couldn't entirely explain the evolution, but I think what's interesting is, I mean, even you look back at 2008, I mean, she was criticizing Obama for his position on like sort of rolling back mandatory minimums. So this is a big change from where, she's been at. And I think that, there's her, like a lot of the country, I think, is affected by just the presence of cell phones, I think, is a really big component of this, actually, right? Because, we have footage of what happened to Freddie Gray, or at least that he was, in pain and was, needed medical attention. And the idea that, this would have been something in the 1990s that there wouldn't have been video of because no one would have had a cell phone around. And, it would have probably been something that went away and, was, internally dealt with. The officers would probably be excused for some reason. So I think it's just, changing the dynamic of indisputable evidence that proves what officers say maybe wasn't right, or that, there's some questions here about what exactly happened.
And you mentioned that this is an issue on both sides of the aisle, which is true. And the Republican candidate who's certainly probably gotten ahead of this issue the most is Senator Rand Paul. And he even has teamed up with Cory Booker on criminal justice reform legislation. First of all, what has been his sort of mantra on this?
I mean, I think a lot of it's big government. I mean, that's sort of a big component of it. But I mean, it's a very bipartisan issue. You have Van Jones teaming up with the Koch brothers. I mean, it's something that is really attracting a lot of attention, and there's been a lot of focus on both sides of the aisle. Maybe the question is what exact things that are focused on legislatively, and there hasn't been anything massive that's passed recently on the federal level. But it is something I think that is attracting attention, and something that a lot of state legislators are focused on, and there has been reform there.
And Rand Paul is focused more on drug sentencing reform, right? Is that kind of his main?
It's a big component of it. Yeah, I think also over militarization of police, I think is a big thing for him. In Ferguson, he was talking about that a lot, and whether it was necessary for them to bring out sort of military.
It's interesting though because he missed his moment on Baltimore as well as on Walter Scott. And those were two big. Walter Scott certainly caught on camera in a very graphic way. Mm-hmm. He was in South Carolina. He didn't really get into it much. And then in Baltimore, he made some offhand comment about how he's glad his train didn't stop there, as opposed to actually talking about Freddie Gray and the issue of police brutality. Mm-hmm. Do you view it as a shying away from the issue? And is there a sense that Republican primary voters, though, are not actually on board with this conversation?
I think it's sort of mixed in the Republican primary. I'm not sure how exactly that's going to play out. I don't know if it'll be incredibly detrimental to candidates necessarily to talk about sentencing reform and that sort of thing, but I don't know that it's also like a key issue that people are going to be voting on because I don't know that it affects a lot of the core voters in the primary process. I don't know that it's something that impacts their everyday lives because, myself and a lot of people just, aren't impacted by the abuses of the criminal justice system on a daily basis. So it's not something that affects you. It's not something that affects your pocketbook necessarily. Well, maybe impacts your pocketbook because we're spending a lot of money on criminal justice and it costs a lot to incarcerate people. But I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a huge focus of the primary.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to me like it. It does seem to me like it could be a very Republican issue because this kind of is one of those issues that goes hand in hand with the notion of big government. That's certainly how I've seen young Republicans describe, for example, the need to reform marijuana laws. They often say, this is why do we have this prohibition policy? We should be the ones who are advocating for a change in viewpoint, don't you think?
Yeah, there are a couple of weird issues in the Republican primary this time around, right? That really will split them and wedge them apart, which we don't usually see. Last time around, it was very similar candidates. I think Ron Paul was really the only one that was breaking with a lot of the conservative trends. But this time, you've got some real interesting topics and really interesting issues they could go all over the place with.
Yeah, I think we're going to see actual real debate. And I think that there's more willingness, too, on the part of these candidates to stake out an entirely different position. Whether it's good or bad for them, we're going to see ultimately. But it's a little bit different from before where it's like, okay, everyone's just going to be pulled to the right and there's going to be a problem for them in the general. This time you actually have, if you look at Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, even Ted Cruz has actually criticized some of the police brutality incidents. And he's like the hard right candidate here. But again, he has like a somewhat of a libertarian following too. Yeah. Tries to rival Rand Paul for that base.
But I think that in the past race, right, there have just been knee-jerk, of course I'm for or against this, because this is what Republicans are for or against. And you've got Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and maybe some other people that are going to come along and really buck that trend. I honestly can't wait to see what happens. Because the argument has been Mitt Romney wasn't conservative enough, or John McCain wasn't conservative enough. Mm-hmm. And now you've got these guys who are really not very conservative on certain issues. We'll see what happens.
I think it's definitely a change to certainly the previous election, but we'll be definitely talking about this a lot more after a break. Ryan Reilly is going to stick with us. We will be right back. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
and the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui with The Guardian here, taking you through almost the end of the second hour of our program this morning.
It's flying by.
Time is just flying by.
Fast?
It always does, especially when you're having fun. And
I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard.
It's a phrase,
It's a phrase, I think.
Yeah.
And especially having fun with Ryan Reilly, who's, of course, a justice reporter at the Huffington Post and ex-colleague of mine, now a nemesis. No.
Yo.
No.
Oh, man.
That's saved for
here.
Evan, though. We already went through this with Evan McMorris-Santoro when we called him in the morning. He is my true nemesis because he also guest hosts this program. That's really just the only thing. There's really nothing else that pits us against each other. It really isn't. But we were talking about criminal justice reform, but especially police brutality. A lot of conversation around policing in this country, discrimination against minorities, and we were talking about how it intersects with the election. But I'm kind of curious because in the midst of Ferguson, obviously President Obama had to come out and really address this in a forceful way, although he has to strike that balance as the commander-in-chief with the police, with law enforcement agencies, and do that kind of delicate dance where he's not offending them. And similarly, in the case of Eric Garner, when there were protests there and then 2 police officers who were killed in New York, it became even more difficult for the president to navigate this issue. He launched a task force. We're almost at a year now to Ferguson. It was last summer.
It's August.
What? I mean, it was a few months, but the summer. It was a summer.
Yeah.
What has he done? And what is actually happening in terms of policy here?
On the federal level, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, not a ton. I think that, Missouri certainly had some big changes. I think one of them, you haven't really had any major law enforcement legislation passed this session, but what was passed was a bill that really reformed and cracked down on the municipal court system there, because the municipal court system was really just abusing people. I mean, and it was the way that they funded their government by basically, threatening people with incarceration for these really, there was literally a saggy pants ordinance that was something where you could literally have baggy pants and that was a fine. And then if you missed your court date for that fine, you could have there would be a warrant out for your arrest, just crazy stuff. So there's going to be somewhat of a crackdown on that. And I think you're going to see the elimination of a lot of towns that really don't have the reason to exist, police departments that don't have a reason to exist, municipal courts don't have a reason to exist. I think that will be the consequence of it because they've capped the revenue and there's not that motivation for people to just be incarcerating people for nonsense anymore.
one of the things that the president did ask for, and again, maybe this is going to happen more so at a state level, especially where this issue has created a lot of tension between constituents and the police there. Mm-hmm. But he did express his support for more funding for body cameras. Mm-hmm. And he asked, I think, Congress for a number. But is he making a real push on that? Or was it, more of a reaction to what was happening? He said, well, I support this. We should spend more money since a lot of the state level, local law enforcement agencies say they can't afford them. Mm-hmm. Is there any movement on that? Is there any traction at a federal level?
There's been a bit. So Holder, before he stepped down, basically his discretionary funds that he had available, a lot of them were dedicated to buying body cameras. So it was like $20 million, I think. But that's not what it would take to equip basically the entire country, because it's a lot of police officers. So that is going to have an impact, I think, and will go to very specific places. But body cameras there's been somewhat of a push on, but not really has happened necessarily through the legislator and Congress. I think I just haven't. I feel like it's not an issue that you see the president out there a lot on. Certainly, I'm curious to get into that reluctance too. I mean, where do you think that comes from? There's issues as issues have come up in his presidency, controversies, or just national issues. Gun violence certainly is a great example. He has decided that he wants to make or incorporate something into his agenda often, as there's been a public outcry. Yeah. But on this, that doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah, it's tough because you can't really. Just politically, it's tough to be critical of police, mm-hmm. and even though it's like you would think in theory, actually, on the Republican side, that it's a public, employee union, like mm-hmm. that people would be more critical, but I think that there's a reluctance, and it's weird because even though you've seen basically Obama and Holder and even the Republican FBI director say very similar things. The FBI director had this recent speech where he talked about, implicit bias and what sort of role that plays in policing. And, even cited the song "Everyone's a Little Bit Racist." And it was talking about this in a very similar way to how Obama and Holder did, and didn't face the same sort of backlash that mm-hmm. you saw when Holder because it's all of a sudden when Holder says anything about cops, it's anti-cop, and when Obama says anything about cops, it's anti-cop.
And I think there's no question that race is a factor there. Yes. There's just no way to look at it, and that's why you have a number of Republican candidates, Ted Cruz and Bobby Jindal certainly have said that the president has incited these racial tensions in this country.
I think it plays a huge role because, you look at Holder, and this is a guy who spent his entire life as a prosecutor, basically. Mm-hmm. He's it should be the most law enforcement guy you can imagine, right? This is what he's done his entire career. He's been the guy cracking down. He was a judge in D.C. Law enforcement, through and through. So the idea that he's anti-cop is sort of crazy. His brother is literally a cop. So the idea that he's oh no, he's totally anti-law enforcement and this radical is nuts.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, I think, and you do have that faction of conservatives, pretty large in number though, who I think just view this through a different prism because we do have a black president. We have a new one now, but both Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, they've raised this issue as well with both of them. It clearly erases the elephant in the room. Yeah. But Ryan, we'll be back with you. We're going to take another break and keep on watching. We'll be back shortly on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys,
and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear we had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like a bag?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Hour 2 basically down. And, before we let Ryan go, I actually wanted to understand what's happening with Johnny Depp's dogs. Someone please help me understand.
All right. I can help you out a little bit.
We have a
here.
little bit.
There's an issue with getting the dogs transported out. I don't know what that issue is. But what came down to is...
How many dogs are we talking about?
There are a couple dogs. I think there's 3 dogs.
Like size?
I think they're smallish.
Smallish, okay.
Oh, there's 2? Do you know the story?
I know a little bit. I mean, he was traveling over to do some shooting, and he took his own plane.
Right.
So he didn't have the right clearance for them.
He didn't have clearance for his dogs. And so the idea here is they were going to put the dogs down. Like today.
Why?
They were going to kill the dogs.
Why?
Because they didn't have the clearance. They weren't going to put them up. So they were going to kill the dogs.
Why is it like you?
I'm not defending it.
Like leave them at a zoo? Like that was what Justin Bieber did, right? That was his thing.
Well, couldn't they put them in like a shelter momentarily?
Apparently that wasn't an option.
I mean, Johnny Depp must be like flipping mad. Like, he didn't get clearance.
He got him out.
Well, yeah, but like this is like crazy.
The zoo idea is pretty great.
This is like the Argo of our time.
Left. You see Johnny Depp's dogs.
I just feel like it's like
these dogs formerly owned by Johnny Depp.
This dog hostage situation.
Yeah, right.
Like, what is wrong with Australia? Although they do like, I mean,
it was literally built as a prison. So I mean,
You're right. I don't know how the dogs are getting back either, but they're.
Johnny Depp must have pulled.
He probably
some strings.
bought him a first-class ticket.
I would imagine, but I'm just like impressed by. I'm just baffled that it was like either you get them out here somehow by this point in time, or they're gone.
Yeah. That's it.
Like that's ruthless. That's just stone cold. This needs to be a movie. This is like Homeward Bound.
This is like
3.
Argo.
No,
This is like Argo meets Homeward Bound.
Homeward
the
Bound
dogs
3.
definitely need to talk in this movie.
Argo.
I'd watch it.
Like, I don't know,
I'd watch
something
it.
like that, right?
Yeah.
I am telling you, this is the issue of our time. Brian Reilly, thank you so much. Justice reporter at the Huffington Post. We'll be back after this break. Keep watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
What they told us we were doing was going to rid the state of frivolous lawsuits. So we said, okay, let's vote for this.
Leading up to the 2003 effort in Texas, the insurance companies primarily, but also the medical industry, started this drumbeat. They were alleging that medical malpractice lawsuits were soaring and the cost of healthcare was going way up. They barraged the citizens of Texas with these frightening, scary messages that we were in some sort of crisis. But the reality was that simply wasn't true.
One of the things I think the public doesn't fully understand is that lawsuits are about a lot more than just seeking compensation for an individual plaintiff. By giving damages to the individual, the jury is sending a message about safety to the doctors, the nurses, the hospital. Please change your ways. Make healthcare safer to protect all of us.
Bill and Kelly Putnam experienced a nightmare scenario. They're in the nursing home with their father. The nurse administers medication improperly. As a result, he started to choke on the medication, and Kelly was forced to provide CPR on her father while staff at the nursing home did nothing.
I was probably 6 inches away from my dad's eyes. He's no longer thrashing, he's no longer moving.
And so they took him to the hospital, they worked on him, cause of death, aspiration. Texas Board of Nursing ruled that the nurse not only did what we said she did, but she also said that the facility had her destroy the medical records for that day and create a new version. I decided to give a lawyer friend a call. I went through probably 10, maybe more. All of them I got the same letter back stating that because of tort reform, we cannot afford to litigate these types of cases.
What the 2003 restrictions did was make it economically unfeasible for most attorneys to take most medical malpractice cases. It's a cynical attempt to make it harder for people to go to court by making it harder for them to get representation.
I do remember when Patricia Whitman first contacted me, because as a cardiologist, I was pretty outraged when I looked at the medical records.
Patricia Whitman visited the emergency room complaining of chest pains. They look at her EKG. Doctor says, no, you've got indigestion, go home. The symptoms persist. Next day she goes in, sees a different physician. She's been having a heart attack.
Anyone looking at this EKG in a patient with chest pain has to consider that that patient is having an acute heart attack until proven otherwise. All of these abnormalities were essentially ignored, and a diagnosis of acid reflux was made in Patricia Whitman's case, and that was the wrong diagnosis.
The doctor came in and he said that I had substantial permanent heart damage and that I was, quote unquote, 100% disabled. Prior to the heart attack, I had a 3,500 square foot home that I took care of, and I was on my feet 8 hours a day going to cosmetology school. Then I would come home and cook for my kids and do whatever else needed to be done. I did it all. After the heart attack, I couldn't keep up with the house. I couldn't pay the mortgage. My life has changed a lot. I will never be able to do what I used to do. I have to depend on 5 heart medications that I have to take every day in order to survive. This is a letter from one attorney. It would be difficult to prove that the ER physician's conduct rose to the level of gross negligence. No attorney would take my case.
Tort reform involved a specific passage of language that said that a simple negligence standard no longer applied to emergency room care in Texas. The new standard was a gross negligence standard called willful and wanton negligence.
You have to prove in court that that doctor saw me walk through the door and said, that's my next victim. And of course that doesn't happen. And so people like Patricia Whitman, who find themselves in the emergency room and are misdiagnosed or harmed, face almost no ability for accountability. If you look back and you break down the arguments made by the insurance companies and medical industry about the cost, quality, access of healthcare in Texas, by every metric, we're worse off today than we were 10 years ago. It has made life better and easier for a small group of corporate interests at the expense of the rest of us.
These corporations, they have no fear because they know that they're not going to be held responsible. It shouldn't be about money. But unfortunately, that's the only language these people speak. That's why we're out protesting.
We will stand out on the street in front of the facility with signs that state what happened and make sure that they understand that we're not going to go away and that what they did was wrong.
We must restore meaningful accountability in this state so that another family does not go through the same nightmare that they've been through. If enough people in the public say enough is enough, then politicians have to think twice. We're never going to be able to compete with the special interests in terms of campaign contributions and money. Where we have to compete with them is in boots on the ground. The more people that rise up and say, we want our rights back, then they have to think about it. And once we've made them think about it, then half the battle is won.
And online, this is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui, a political reporter at The Guardian, and I am filling in for Bill on this Friday. We have entered the final hour of our show, so making it through this Friday, and obviously I've had the wonderful company of the regular team here. Peter Ogburn, executive producer. Hello.
Hi, Sabrina. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm all right.
I feel like we haven't talked today.
I know. We haven't. I was reading the comments in the chat room. We all think you're doing a wonderful job, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. Elisa Murphy is running the board.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. And Jamie Benson is screening your calls. Monty Kanzler, our video operator, making us all look good on camera. And we have another great guest with us now, and it's Eric Bradner from CNN, who is a politics breaking news reporter. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Bradner, and I think is joining us on this program after about a year.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. I talked about trade here last time, so
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to.
So it comes a full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
We have plenty to get into with you. I've definitely been wanting to talk about some of this conversation in the 2016 race about the Iraq War. We're going to talk a little bit more about trade, as we mentioned, but first.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. You know what I like, Sabrina? I like a nice, firm handshake. I like a nice, good, firm handshake.
Okay.
All right? So, like a bad, weak, limp-wristed handshake is no good. And it turns out it might be bad for your health. Canadian researchers have linked poor hand grip strength to a greater risk of early death, stroke, and heart attack. They have linked it to cardiovascular strength. So if you've got like a weak, one of these little washcloths.
Canadians are weird, man.
This is not just Canadian. That's your takeaway? That's your takeaway. Canadians are weird.
No, I'm not a scientist.
Hashtag analysis.
I'm not a scientist, man.
No?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Canadians are weird, yes. But this study.
Keep going.
This study shows that a good, firm, strong handshake is a sign of good cardiovascular health.
Do you have a strong handshake?
He has a good handshake. I shook his hand when he came in. He was strong like bull.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get in the way of the Canadian bashing because I'm all for that. But I think we might have the cause and effect flipped here. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight's night. Tonight is the night. Romney taking on Evander Holyfield. Here it is. It's the fight of the century, maybe?
It is the fight of the century.
Yeah, forget the Pacquiao.
It's going to be way better than that.
It's got to be more entertaining.
Yeah.
They weighed in last night, and I got to tell you, Romney looked pretty good. He was wearing like a tank top situation.
Yeah.
He had the guns out. He's 68 years old, and he's fighting 52-year-old.
He's in prime shape, though, you got to say.
Do we have the vital stats? Height, weight?
Does he have a firm handshake? Do we know?
That's what we need to know.
So we need to know.
This is, of course, all going to go to charity. They
How
say
is he 68?
He looks good for
68. He does not look 68.
He looks good for 68.
Are you going to watch?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, I've got nothing better to do on a Friday night.
I think it's online.
Stream it, right?
Yeah, I know. It's definitely online.
Well, 100% of the proceeds are going to benefit Charity Vision.
So what's the over-under here?
Look, I think this is going to be probably. This is like a boxing match the way that a Harlem Globetrotters basketball game is actually purely basketball. I think it's going to be pretty hokey and jokey. And
The Harlem
no one's getting
Globetrotters
punched.
have athletic talent, though.
Yeah. No one's getting punched. Mitt Romney's not going to get punched in the face by Evander Holyfield, period.
All right.
It won't happen. It's just not going to happen.
Prediction made.
Yeah. And PPP polls took a look at America's favorite basketball player. We have a new favorite basketball player.
Okay, so it's not LeBron.
The most popular favorite basketball player used to be LeBron,
right?
But no more. Who is it now? Any
Kevin
guesses?
Durant?
Kevin Durant is number 4.
How about Curry?
Curry is number 1.
There you go.
A winner. Steph Curry has taken over as the most favorite basketball player in America. LeBron James is number 2. Kobe Bryant, number 3.
How is Kobe Bryant still number 3? I mean, I
don't know how
fan.
Kobe Bryant.
I say this is the one who earlier in the show actually was talking about why I'm a Lakers fan. Has to do with Kobe Bryant growing up in Italy, like me, like myself. But how is he still a third?
I didn't play.
He played more than a handful of games in like
what
3
has he
years.
even been doing? I mean, I think it is just because he's like.
Same
well,
with Durant.
well,
Durant didn't play all season.
Well, Durant's though. I mean, more recently than Kobe Bryant has been been MVP, has been relevant to this. I think Kobe Bryant's like one of the like remaining legacy players right now in the league. So he's just going to always figure in this race until he finally retires.
My biggest takeaway from this is everybody's wrong. Tim Duncan should be everybody's favorite basketball player. But I'm biased.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, it's all you. So, we have been talking a lot about the election, about what's happening on Capitol Hill this morning. And I do kind of want to kick it off, though, because we didn't get around to talking about this earlier. The Iraq war question that is haunting Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida, who is not running, but running for president, and other candidates as well. It will also come back to haunt Hillary Clinton, certainly, because she did also vote for that war and has not had to very recently discuss it. I kind of want to get into what Jeb Bush said last night, because originally he was asked by Fox News host Megyn Kelly, would you have authorized this knowing what we know now? And he said he would have. But most recently, here's what he had to say.
If we're all supposed to answer hypothetical questions, knowing what we know now, what would you have done? I would have not engaged. I would not have gone into Iraq.
So it's obviously now he's come around to this. This is after several days and several takes on this question. First, he said yes to Megyn Kelly. Then he said, I misheard the question. And he kind of said, I don't know if I would have. And then he's finally come around full circle, I guess. Not full circle. Just
4 shots, yeah.
Yes. Why was he not more prepared for this question in your view? Should he have been more prepared? How damaging is this in terms of as he tries to portray himself as his own man and distance himself from his brother's policies and administration?
Well, if you're Jeb Bush and you're thinking about running for president, this has to be among the very first questions that you realize you're going to get asked at some point. And so not being prepared is pretty inexcusable. It's frankly hard to understand. I actually thought his most recent answer, had it been his first one, would have been a good one, because he sort of followed it up with, look, there's some family loyalty here, and there's also, as someone who had to call the families of deceased service members and whatnot, you don't want to say that they died in vain. That's a fair point. That was a good answer the first time. I don't know. It plays into this idea that Jeb is he says he wants to be his own man and that he is his own man. But if Americans are worried about, a third Bush presidency, like, this makes it a lot harder to sort of forget about that
And
concern.
he's also brought on a lot of advisors on national security and foreign policy, the advisors who were also serving his brother.
Well, and one of them apparently is his brother.
And one on Israel.
Right.
Israel obviously is somewhere he could probably get away with that because obviously, there were no issues in particular on the Republican side with W's or any side, for that matter, with his policy toward Israel. He just didn't do much. I mean, it was just, but does that also complicate it because you are dealing with some of the architects of this war? They're advising your campaign, but also then that begs the question: why bring on that same team?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the great benefit of being a Bush and the big problem with being a Bush, right? He's got all of these people who existed within his brother's orbit, and frankly, it's hard not for him to hire some of them or lean on some of them. And so, I mean, that plus the report that he told private donors that he relied on his brother's advice about Israel. And it's not that, it's not that Israel is what's controversial. It's that, the idea that behind closed doors, he's talking about his brother and that sort of thing, when in public he's not. So, I mean, it sort of created this atmosphere where this Iraq story could land with a wallop when he stumbled over the questions.
And now it's become kind of this litmus test for Republican candidates. And so Senator Marco Rubio gave a speech, big foreign policy speech, the Council on Foreign Relations, on Wednesday, and he did a Q&A with Charlie Rose after. Obviously, he got the same question. And let's take a quick listen to what Senator Marco Rubio of Florida had to say, how he handled the Iraq war question.
Well, not only would I not have been in favor of it, President Bush would not have been in favor of it. And he said so.
And then he also went on to talk about the faulty intelligence and trying to understand the context of it.
Well, President Bush has said that he regrets that the intelligence was faulty. I don't think the Congress would have voted in favor of authorization if they didn't know that. But let's also be fair about the context. Yes, there was intelligence that was faulty, but there was always a history with Iraq of evasion. It was a country that had mobile units in the past that it used for both CW, chemical weapons and biological capabilities.
So obviously, Senator Marco Rubio had the fortune of seeing what happened to Jeb Bush, avoiding that trap. But I think he actually seemed to handle this rather deftly.
He did. Yeah, Marco Rubio has, one of the skills that he's really shown so far is the ability to learn from other people's mistakes. I mean, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Mike Pence back in Indiana was having a really hard time with that religious freedom issue. And it was Rubio who got the first question out of the 2016ers after Pence did that horrible interview with George Stephanopoulos. And Rubio just owned the issue. He sort of set a tone that a lot of conservatives were hoping Pence would have set. And so, here again on Iraq, obviously he knew this issue was coming up given Jeb Bush's trouble. But he really got it right, at least, from the Republican perspective. Other candidates did too, though. I mean, it was like Jeb Bush tripped on the question, and then everyone else started saying, like, of course, this is the answer. So, and Jeb Bush, finally admitted as much too.
Absolutely. And it also, go ahead.
I just want to ask you a question about Jeb Bush overall, right? Because he hasn't officially, I mean, he did declare he's running for president in 2016, but that was his little gaffe that he had. But he hasn't officially declared. Is there a chance that he might not actually do this because it seems like he's not that great at it so far, right? Like, he had a couple of issues already where he had to go back and get a mulligan. The Indiana freedom of religion, he stood behind that until even the governor of Indiana had to walk that back. He sent James Baker to J Street, a fairly progressive organization, which he also had to walk back. This Iraq situation, he's walking back, had to do a complete 180. It's not going going
It isn't, but I think he's made the decision.
Yeah, right.
He's got this crazy fundraising.
Yeah.
He's made so much money. But let's get a little bit more into this after the break, because we've been talking about the whole not running versus actually running and how that intersects with this. Eric Bradner will be back with us, so stay tuned and keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
They called her Little Sanju. She was born in a village at the foot of the Himalayas, the smallest of 7 brothers and sisters.
My family was very poor. To get by, we raised cows and we made small things for tourists out of bamboo. But we were always hungry, and no matter how hard he tried, my father was always in debt. When I was 11, my father told me I had to go to work making carpets. I had to leave with a man who took me to the carpet factory. The broker who took me away got paid, but they never paid my father anything. I made knots from 4 in the morning until 8 at night. There was never a day off. I was always hungry. I cut my fingers while weaving and had to weave with cut fingers. My hands began to look like my grandmother's. I cried every night. I thought the rest of my life would be only this.
It takes 1 million knots to make one 8x10 rug. In the 1990s, 1 million children were enslaved making carpets in South Asia. Then a hero entered the picture. It was you. If you knew how these carpets were made, you would no longer think they were so beautiful. And if you could choose a better rug, your buying power could end child slavery in the rug industry. From that simple idea, Goodweave was born. Here's how it works. To earn the Goodweave label, companies agreed not to employ children. Goodweave makes sure by conducting surprise inspections. When children are found, Goodweave helps them.
2 years ago, a Goodweave inspector named Grona found me in the factory. When I saw him, I was scared, but Grona put his arm around me and told me it would be okay. Grona took me to Hamrogar, a home for rescued carpet kids run by Goodweave. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to school.
Today, thousands of children like Sanju have been educated and rescued by Goodweave. And because you chose the Goodweave label, 3/4 of those million children weaving carpets are now free. And Sanju, with Goodweave's support, she's able to attend her village school and live at home where she belongs. Now that's a beautiful rug that tells a beautiful story. Stand with Sanju. Insist on the Goodweave label.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill on this wonderful Friday morning. Right before the break, we were talking to Eric Bradner, who is a breaking news politics reporter at CNN. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Bradner. And we were discussing the Iraq War question that's been, well, at least giving Jeb Bush some issues on the campaign trail, if we can call it that. Exploratory campaign trail, if you will. But, you know, another person who's been in the early stages of a campaign is, of course, Hillary Clinton, the Democratic front runner for the nomination. And she hasn't had to answer many questions because she hasn't dealt with the press a lot. And, you know, Eric, you have said, or you I think you have an argument here that the equivalent of the Iraq War question for Hillary is actually not Iraq only itself, the fact that she supported it, but trade. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So, different scale, different type of issue, obviously. But in the way that the Iraq issue plays into Jeb's big problem, which is, the family legacy thing and how he's going to deal with that, trade plays into Hillary Clinton's big problem with the left and with voters in general, which is this concern that she's someone who waffles with the wind, who just sort of waits to see how popular opinion is developing and only then jumps in with a firm position on an issue. So obviously she was in President Obama's administration when he started negotiating these trade deals. Her husband is Bill Clinton, who signed NAFTA. She has a long history on trade, and it's going to be hard to convince liberals that she can be with them on this issue where there seems to be such a clear divide in the party. And she's been radio silent on it, right? Unlike Jeb Bush, who's been out stumbling, Jeb Bush has been one of the most accessible 2016ers. He does talk to the press. He's been stumbling on Iraq, but he's been available. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, has been completely quiet on trade. She's, made one comment, just sort of, as questions are being shouted at her, and she issued one statement, very tepid, didn't really say much. I mean, the currency manipulation thing was like coded language, but it sort of plays into this problem that she's had for a very long time that she's trying really hard to avoid this time around.
I think in the calculation it seems to be among her team is that this process has begun so early, and the coverage, of course, the 24/7 nature of it, it's unparalleled and keeps on growing in every new cycle. And she has less people contesting her as well on the Democratic side. So there's been this wiggle room for her, at least for now.
Right.
Now, Martin O'Malley is planning to announce his intentions on May 30th. So this is coming up soon. Obviously, Bernie Sanders is in the race, and he's a very critical or big critic of the president's trade agenda. Martin O'Malley also is running to the left of Hillary. So are we now reaching that point where she won't be able to avoid these tough questions?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the idea that, look, a campaign is a long, hard thing, and you don't want to be sidetracked by the issue of the day all the time. That's fair. But the trade thing, this is real. This is not like, candidate said something dumb, react. This is like a big issue that everyone, at least in the Democratic base is talking about, is thinking about, that's not going to go away. It will still be on the table when the next president takes office. And that Congress is in the middle of a really interesting it's like issue at this. It's will continue,
and I'm curious about, and I know that the basis of her campaign these early stages has been focused on the economy, connecting with middle class voters. But foreign policy is Republicans are mounting all of their critique. And polls very low, and former Secretary link between players in Syria and state and that threat. Is that something that you think she does not have to deal with until the general?
Well, possibly. I mean, she's going to have to weigh in at some point, and I suspect she will. They're not, because there's not over as effectively as they can, say, trade or Wall Street. And there's not a particular action forcing event right now. So, but no, I think, a lot of people in Iowa and New Hampshire especially are clamoring for Hillary Clinton to start making bigger speeches, and I think we'll start to see that soon.
Absolutely. Well, Eric Bradner, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely talking to you here. We'll be back after a short break. Keep on watching and stay tuned. Keep watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, nearing the end of our show now, filling in for Bill. And guys, I always tell you that I save the best for last, but this is truly saving the best for last right now. We are now joined by Greg Engert, who is the beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group and Bluejacket Brewery. And he's brought a lot of props, which we intend to use. But Greg, before we really get into this, so what's happening is you've got this ABV festival. It's a one-day only party at Navy Yards Canal Park. There's beer, there's wine, there's spirits. Tell us about it.
So yeah, it's this is the first kind of festival of its kind, we think, in DC. We have myself pouring nearly 40 different beers. Brent Kroll, who's the wine director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, is pouring a bunch of delicious kind of spring wines. Jeff Vail, who's our spirits and cocktail director, is going to be making a bunch of delicious drinks. And it's all happening at Canal Park and Navy Yard, which is also near Bluejacket, tomorrow from 3 to 8. So you can sleep in and then come on down for that.
Sleep in and booze. That's the way to spend your Saturday.
I'm going to tweet out a link so you could see the gargantuan list of all the different alcohols that you could try.
I mean, it's
huge.
It's
awesome.
extensive and it's wonderful.
And I think it's something for everyone, or for people who like to mix beer and liquor.
I did want to ask you about that old adage about like mixing things up.
We're going to find out.
And you can bring your dog.
Two professionals don't care.
To this, you can bring your dog. That's key.
Yeah.
I mean,
think so.
That is serious. That's really cool.
Don't bring your dog. I guess you can. Don't bring your dog.
Listen, I'm just trying to encourage everyone, and DC is full
It's
of
going to be awesome.
dog lovers.
Also, we have Nathan Anda, who's our chef and butcher for the Red Apron Concepts and the Partisan in DC. He's going to be making amazing food as well, so it's going to be outstanding.
Man, I don't know how anyone can miss this.
Yeah, it should be good.
So you brought us some examples of what will be available?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I did bring the first beer that I brought is from Bluejacket, believe it or not. This is our brewery down in Navy Yard. And this is a really cool beer. It's called Further. We just came out with it, and this will also be at ABV. It is a low alcohol. It's about 4% alcohol, so you can crush it.
So it's perfect for breakfast.
Mildly tart wheat beer. And it's got a little bit of coriander, a little bit of sea salt, and then about 150 pounds of papaya.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That's amazing.
This is great. And the sea salt, that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, it's just like,
it's a little bit of a hint of it there.
Brine.
That's delicious.
Yeah. And is this new? Is this a new?
Yeah, so
brew
we
that you
released this probably like a couple weeks ago. First time we've done it. We do lots of sour beers, refreshing, crisp, tart ales at Bluejacket, but this is the first one where we incorporated some fresh winter papaya.
Yeah, how often do you change it up?
A lot. So basically we've been open now for a year and a half at Bluejacket, but we've in that time released well over 100 different beers. And like next week, I think we have 5 new beers coming on board. So it's
holy cow.
I mean, over 30 beers will be available at tomorrow.
Yeah, and Further will be one of them. But then we are pouring beers from other breweries. So one of the kind of beers that we'll be pouring as well is this one. Not to rush this down, but
fine, Greg. I'll chug this one.
Yeah, I guess. If you want me to have two at once. I mean, if I have double fist beers, I will.
This is so this is a really amazing craft brewery from Montreal called Brasserie du Ciel, and they make this beer year round. It's called Rosé d'Hibiscus.
I was gonna say, it has like a winey.
Totally rosé kind of quality to it. So this is my fiance Kelsey's favorite beer, so we typically have it at all the restaurants. Like Churchkey has this beer lots of times on draft, but it's just a kind of a crisp, quenching wheat beer that they added a lot of hibiscus flowers, and that's why it has this kind of pinkish hue to it.
I take back the jokes I made about our friends in Canada earlier in the show now.
Well, this is in Canada.
This is a beautiful beer, too.
Yeah.
It's just like a ruby color to it.
It's amazing. Awesome. And I think it's great for people who want something that's kind of clean and bright and refreshing, but it also has a complexity in the nose and really cool label art as well.
Yeah, that's a really cool label.
So how many people work on in terms of the curation of all of this when you guys are, and even just experimentation?
So basically what I do for the company is I curate all of our beer lists, and we have about 14 different bars and restaurants throughout DC and Northern Virginia. So I run the beer list at all of them. And then with Bluejacket, I work with a team of 3 amazing brewers who are just constantly innovating and sending this stuff through. So it's a lot of really rewarding work for sure.
I mean, if there's ever an envious job, I'm sure this
totally.
This is one of them.
And all right, so this one, this was the one that I'd be really interested to see what you guys think about.
All right.
Okay.
This is brand new.
Give me the one with the little amount of it.
Oh,
come on.
Okay. Sabrina.
I said I have to go to the office after this.
So
where are you going?
This is
bed.
Exactly.
This is from Avery Brewing Company out in Boulder, Colorado. They make incredible hoppy beers and incredible sour beers. This is an experimental sour, about 8% alcohol, sour blonde ale that's been aged for
8% alcohol. Nice.
Aged for 9 months
boy.
in Suerte tequila barrels.
Yo.
And then finished with lime zest and some.
This is my
salt.
favorite.
Really?
This is.
It's kind of like a margarita.
Yes, and that happens to be my choice drink. So, well, red wine and margarita, but
Holy cow.
right?
Is that fantastic?
Right? Isn't
That's
it?
really cool.
This is really cool.
Not cool.
I love that.
We're all drooling in here, by the way.
I mean, there's going to be some for you as well, because there's no way that I'm
Leftovers.
finishing
You
all
have
of
some
this.
leftovers.
No, I mean,
That's so cool, though.
it is really
I've
cool.
never had a beer like
I
that.
think this is the most unique beer that I've tasted.
and actually tomorrow at ABV, we're going to have another beer from Avery that's based on the Manhattan. So it's called Insula Multa Colibus, and it is a bourbon barrel aged sour red ale with cherries, and it's
Wow.
so.
See, I love liquor and I love beer. So like,
and wine. I love wine. They have wine too.
yeah.
I mean, you guys.
But I
got
just
it
mean they've
covered.
combined two of my favorite things here. It's like liquor type beer, whatever.
And without having to be like a beer cocktail. or
Yeah,
something
right,
like that.
right,
Yeah,
right.
It's inspired by the
Yeah,
cocktail.
because I was gonna go in and order like a margarita with a little bud dropped into it, the Budderitas.
But now you can just have this.
Now this is a classy.
The
this is a classy.
Budderitas.
I know.
Oh, come on.
It's like classy.
The Strawberritas.
I'm never gonna order that. Are you
The
kidding? I'm just saying this
Strawberries.
is like a classy way to drink that.
If only Ryan Reilly were still here, because he ordered a Strawberita in front of me. Well, we had little choice. We were at a concert, and there was
No, you always
the
have a
Mayweather
choice. What do you
Pavilion.
think he didn't have a choice?
I guess he had a choice.
I've been to Merriweather Pavilion. There are 100 other options there.
Yeah.
A Strawberita.
A Strawberita.
Hard pass.
Hard
No
pass.
thanks.
It's like ordering Mike's Hard Lemonade. I mean,
Is that still made?
Yeah.
I think it is.
It
yeah.
is. It's currently stocks the shelves of the Harris Teeter behind my
What,
building.
you guys don't
so
sell that?
No, we haven't.
there's not a high demand.
I thought it was a rare product.
None
Couldn't
of
get our
those-
hands on it.
None of those 10th graders coming in looking for their Mike's Hard Lemonade fix.
That's true.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
we can
much
do that.
the target audience.
I think it is.
I stick with Zima. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the new generation Zima.
That's long
That is
gone.
totally
All right, listen, why don't we take a break?
Sure.
And enjoy some of this, and then we can come back and talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
I actually especially
And
want to
there's
talk more
another
about.
beer.
There's more beer. So we'll continue our taste test and talk a little bit more about Bluejacket too. Keep on tuning in. We'll be back in a few minutes on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. Truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, still here with you, and fortunately still coherent enough to carry us through the end of this show. Slightly coherent enough. And I'm a little person. I had a yogurt, okay? I've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning.
This is great.
And I put this in front of me.
So basically you're about to swing on somebody.
Well, right. Well, we're with Greg Engert, who is, of course, of the Neighborhood Restaurant Group and Bluejacket Brewery, the beer director, best title ever. I mean, you just introduce yourself and it's just like, hello, I'm a beer director. It's kind of a great...
It's weird, isn't it? I'm still not used to it. I still can't believe it.
I mean, as far as aspirational title, I want to be able to go. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm glad I made it up.
One of the things, one of the things that you do as beer director, I think, is making sure that people are drinking somewhat seasonally, right? Like or I should say, offer things that are seasonal. All these things that I've had today are perfect for the weather that we've been having.
Right.
Sunny, hanging out outside, not super hot, but I always call them chuggable beers.
As we speak.
They're all pretty chuggable beers.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
I can never understand these people who drink like a big, heavy porter or a stout or something when it's over 80 degrees.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I think some people are just like what they like and don't care what the weather tells them. But I think the biggest thing about craft beer, possibly, besides just increased quality, and an option to have quality over just, swill, is the variety factor. And I think that we go to craft beer for variety so much. But so much so, I mean, there's 3,400 breweries in the U.S. now, not to mention how many imports come in. So it's like, okay, if there's so much stuff out there, what do we choose to drink and when? And I feel like we kind of naturally organize our drink choices by season. I think it makes sense. So maybe you might love, further from Bluejacket, but maybe you just go to that in this time of year.
Yeah, sure.
Versus, so I think that it's a good way to do it. And plus, I mean, it's hot out.
They're all very crisp and light,
clean and refreshing.
So, seasonality is obviously one big component. Mm-hmm. What are the other questions you ask yourself when you go about your job? What are the key questions you're asking?
Totally, yeah. So, that's a great question. Now, so even seasonality is going to always exist, but at all of our restaurants, we need to cover flavor profiles, right? We can't just have, like all of our beers be light, crisp, refreshing, quaffable, like spring beers. We need to have some other styles for different palates, but also for different plates. Because the other big thing that I do is pair all these beers with the dishes that are coming out of our amazing kitchens. So even though we might not be looking to grab that pint of porter in August, if you're at Birch and Barley, for instance, and you're going to get, some of these more like seafood-based dishes that have a lot of brine to them and are really kind of big and have a little bit of salinity, you're going to want that porter to balance against it. So it's just keeping the balance on the list is cool, and rotation, so that people know that there's something new every time they come in.
All right. Well, so Dave Wakeman on Twitter, who is just a resident of Washington, D.C., said, ask for a sample of the clamor, which we don't have, but I just want to know what that is.
I'll go get it for right now. It's just around the corner.
Apparently those who are listening...
That's awesome. Clamor is... I'm glad that Dave likes that beer. It's an Imperial IPA that we make that is hugely hoppy and just really bold. And that's like one of those ones where like IPAs never go out of style seasonally. Right. People are going to drink IPAs, Imperial IPAs, Session IPAs, whatever they are, year round. And so Clamor is one that has gotten such great feedback, and we love so much that we have kept continually brewing it. It's gaining a little bit of a follow.
So you don't have the Clamor, but you do have this.
This is, yes.
What is this? What's the last one that we've got here?
This beer is from our vaults at Bluejacket. We do a lot of barrel age work at Bluejacket, of course. We make lots of sour beers, as we saw with Further. This beer is called Traveler's 12K. It's a beer that we brewed.
There's perfectly enough in there.
I'm reviving it for you.
Yeah, freshen up, Sabrina. What's the problem?
So this is a really cool beer we did last year, so it's vintage now, and it was a sour. Oh, you want the little one?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I have to, listen, I got to go to the office and actually write stories after this, so I need to. I've got to go write about abortion and contraception today.
Great.
I mean, I need a these are heavy topics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I need a drink before that.
Before and after, but
yeah.
I mean, so you were saying, so let him go on about the.
As beer director, this is the beer that I would suggest to pair with that concept. So this is a really cool beer. We created this. It's a sour beer. We used this specific type of yeast called Brettanomyces that gives it a little bit of an earthy, funky note, almost reminiscent of like old world white wine. And then we aged it for 5 months in Cabernet Franc barrels from Napa. It's Larkin Cabernet Franc. Sean Larkin's a good friend of ours. And he makes amazing Napa Cab Franc, so those are his barrels.
There's like an aftertaste.
It's very funky.
Yeah, it kicks in a little.
In the best possible
way. In a good way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's interesting. Because I was kind of going through the sensations as I was having it. I was like, oh, wait, what's that? There's more.
Yeah, this is it's earthy, it's funky, it's got tannin on the palate too, so it's got a dry, slight oaky note to it. But what I like about it is that it's integrated. It doesn't just smell like red wine. It's got enough of that like funky old world farmhouse beer character underneath.
Really cool. Love that. That's really good.
So what's your favorite?
Choose wisely, Peter.
Yeah.
Mine is like the margarita.
Obviously,
what was the margarita?
Margarita, yeah, that's the Fortuna from Avery Brewing Company.
This is my personal favorite.
Clearly, my two favorite were the ones from Bluejacket.
I knew that.
The first one and the last one. I mean, that's.
But if you had to choose another one.
No, you know
okay,
what?
listen.
Honestly,
in my defense, he brought all of them here, so I'm allowed to pick any of them. I mean, you're like my favorite, the ones in Bluejacket.
I really like this Travelers. I really do like
cool.
it. It's a really, really cool beer. And it's very different. And like, I don't remember the last time I had a beer that tasted anything remotely like this.
Yeah, this has been a pretty big favorite of ours. We've stashed a lot of it away, so every now and then we kind of pull some bottles out for special occasions like this or for certain events and things like that.
I mean, I know that you're not really allowed to, but like, do you ever get sick of beer? Are you ever at this point where you're like, I just can't?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, so beer, I drink, first of all, I drink excessively, and I drink, and anything I get my hands on.
Yeah. Welcome.
So,
I told my friend the other day I was taking a cleanse, and he was like, oh, how long? I was like, I don't know. I was thinking like 3 days. 4 days. He's like, that's not a cleanse. That's not a cleanse. That's like the week.
That's like recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I drink. I love wine. I love spirits. I love cocktails. And I do take a break a lot. Especially like when the beer can be kind of like work at Bluejacket. We're tasting blends and different beers all day long. So when you get done with that, sometimes you just want to crush like a glass of scotch.
If you ever get sick of it, if you ever need a fill-in, as I do here on this program, I'm happy to contribute.
Some Friday you can come in and be the beer director.
Wine I'm actually really good with. So if there's a need
you
got
to meet Brent Kroll is our wine director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group. He's going to be at ABV tomorrow, and you and he would have lots to talk about wine-wise.
Yeah, I got to go talk to him, and I got to go ask for his job.
We tweeted out the link, by the way,
yes.
to check out the event tomorrow. If you're anywhere close to DC, you should definitely check it out.
Because I think that we still have some advanced tickets available, and then of course the tickets are available at the door.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a huge thank you to you, Greg, for coming in today, and of course, do not forget to check out the ABV Festival tomorrow if you are in the DC area, 3 to 8 p.m. Navy Yards, Canal Park. We will take another break and be back with you to close out the show. Keep watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, we have made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bill Press Show, and I, as your guest host, have had the best time being here, as I always do. Of course, now it's hard to focus because Elisa is chugging some
What are you doing?
Bluejacket.
Are you drinking out of that giant bottle? Holy crap.
That was
Elisa.
the further one. I wanted
Cheers.
to try it so bad.
Listen, it's Friday. It's Friday. We're going to be a little loose today.
Here's the thing about Elisa.
Where is you? You're done.
I chugged all mine. Here's the thing about Elisa. On Fridays when we have these, well, I'll walk by and she'll be getting some work done, and her face is like a bright red. And there's no hiding the fact that she's been drinking.
It is a serious tell.
Down.
Yeah.
I can. I'm a Murphy. It's in the blood.
Oh, Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, this is, honestly, I can't thank you enough for fulfilling my request to have either
shot.
Although now I realize that I have to go to work, and
Good luck with that.
Good luck to me,
I'm
indeed.
done. I got like 2 minutes left, and I'm done.
You're a jerk. I mean, listen, it's been a long week. Okay, I've had to deal with, I don't know, the NSA and trade in 2016, and who knows what else. Like,
you
so
needed a drink.
I think I deserve, yeah. And I actually took a 2-day cleanse.
A 2-day cleanse? What's a 2-day cleanse?
It's not drinking for 2 days.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. Someone said I'm slurring my words, by the way, and I am going to tell you that it's not that easy.
I took like a 3-hour
cleanse
this morning before Greg came in. So.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a slur. You can't really tell.
I think this is just my natural way. And it's not because I'm tired. But anyhow, we've had a great show. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back soon, but keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.